can be seated. Hi, my name is Paul Charnier. I'm the editorial page editor of the Day newspaper. We welcome you to tonight's debate for the mayoral candidates in the city of Norwich. From your left to right, we have Bill Russell, the Libertarian candidate, Peter Nystrom, the Republican candidate, Joe Radecki, a petitioning candidate, John Oldfield, also a petitioning candidate, and Derell Wilson, the Democratic candidate. I'd like to thank the Norwich Board of Education, Superintendent Abby Dolliver for the use of these great facilities. The Day newspaper is getting help from the League of Women Voters, providing timekeepers. And we also have had help in organizing these various events from the Chamber of Commerce of Eastern Connecticut. So we thank them. Tonight's debate is going to be video recorded and available starting tomorrow on theday.com. So you can mention it to people who were unable to view it. They'll be able to watch it there. Our format will be fairly straightforward. The candidates will go right to questions. They'll get a minute to answer the questions. We'll rotate the order. Everyone will have a chance to comment on the question, and there'll be opportunities for 30-second rebuttals. Some of you have submitted questions before we began. We got quite a few from emails leading up to this event, and I also had a few that I put together, so we should have plenty of questions. We'll be going to roughly 8 o'clock. All the candidates, towards the close of the debate, will have the opportunity to make closing comments. So with that, we're going to go right to questions. The order was determined by a random lottery. And we'll start with Mr. Russell, and everyone will get a chance again at the question. Mr. Russell, Norwich has a population of nearly 40,000 people and a municipal budget of $45 million. What makes you qualified to be its mayor? And I'll ask the candidates, make sure you speak close to the microphone so we get on the PA. Mr. Russell?
Well, I have been in Norwich since 1981. I've seen what's happened to this city, and it's basically time for someone to get in there and get the citizens back involved, and also to get the taxes down. The taxes in this city are ridiculously high, and it's time for us to do something about that. Let's make everything more efficient. Let's basically cut out things that government should not be doing, and let's just make government more friendly. I mean, it's time to do whatever it takes to get the people involved, and I think I'm the candidate to do that because, of course, I have no political background, so to speak, but I do have a lot of solutions to take care of what it is that ails this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nystrom, what makes you qualified to be mayor of Norwich?
I'm the only person that's ever served in public office of the 5 running for mayor at this time. I was the mayor from 2009 to 2013. I worked very well with all parties and all people. I put the needs of the city first. Case in point, this last year's budget, when we came forward with a resolution reducing spending in order that we could, in effect, lower the cost of living and lower taxes, we worked with our new city manager, who's a paid professional. He's trained, and he has many, many years of service, first as a comptroller, then as a city manager. I think we demonstrated some discipline and some backbone, and I think we're going to need that going forward because the next 2 years, the next 4 years total, the fact that we still don't have a state budget, 4 out of $10 is subject to either being here or not being here. And someone untested, unproven, and literally not trained for this particular job, and I'd like to think that I am. All the work I've done all my life is needed.
Thank you. Mr. Radecki, what qualifications you have to be the mayor of the city of Norwich?
I've never been in political office. I've been a businessman pretty much my whole life after getting out of the Navy. The city manager, as Peter just said, is the backbone of the city. The mayor is really a figurehead. It's not a powerful mayor system in this city. You have a city council. I know dollars and cents. I know how the city operates from being a contractor in the city for 40-some years now. Other than that, you have professional people in this city. We have our own, like you said, we have the city manager. We have our money men, or accountants. Everything in the city is in place. The manager is the backbone, and the mayor is a weak mayor in the city, as we know, and we all have to work together as a family. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oldfield, qualifications to be mayor of the city of Norwich?
Yes, sir. I was born and raised in Norwich, went to NFA, in fact, went to this junior high school right here, and went off to college and was a varsity athlete. That's how I put myself through college, was wrestling. My parents didn't have a lot of money for college, so I had to be an athlete to go to college. I came back to Norwich, started working for the state of Connecticut, where I was the vice president of the largest law enforcement local in the state of Connecticut. Our budget was in the millions of dollars for AFSCME, and I had an office in Middletown. And I found the office in the old courthouse, used the old courtroom for meetings that we had, put the whole basic fundamentals of putting that whole organization together from the mess it was in. I was an infantry officer in the Marine Corps. I was a company commander for a while, replacing a captain who had been transferred. And when you're in charge of 120 lives, it's a big responsibility. And getting back to the city manager, John Solomon, I get along with him. He's been on our show.
Thank you. And last, Mr. Wilson.
So for me, I have actually been a part of this community my entire life. Since the age of 9, I've served as a leader in this community, serving as local president for the NAACP, and then consequently going on to serve as the state conference president for the last 5.5 years. So I've worked in this community. I know how this community works. I know how to strategically plan so that we involve everybody. I think being mayor, it takes that. It takes having a plan that includes everybody, both residents as well as our departments and our other elected officials. In order to move the city in a direction that we can all be proud of, we've got to incorporate everyone. Yes, there's going to be discussions that are not, everybody doesn't agree, but we need to have a plan in order to reach that goal. For me, I'm willing to sacrifice the next 4 years here in the city as mayor with a plan to bring business here, incorporate residents, and start the dialogue to bringing things that we all think are priorities here.
Thank you. Any further comment on what the candidates heard from the other candidates, particularly Mr. Radecki characterized it as a figurehead. I was wondering if any of the other candidates might respond to that. Do they see it that way, or do they see it in some other fashion? Mr. Nystrom, sure.
I think it's much more than that. The whole reason the title was changed was because it was a reflection of what was acknowledged, that the title of the President of the City Council was not given the same due respect out in the communities beyond the city of Norwich, including in Hartford. And so the charter revision went forward. It's now a mayor. They have an equal vote as any other city council member, and they have a responsibility to work with that elected body, whoever they may be, after November 7th, and make sure you can form alliances and get the job done. It's not trivial.
Anyone else? We'll go Mr. Oldfield and
Yeah, I'd just like to say, the mayor's job is primarily to bring in business and industry. I've already been doing that by going around with these, looking at the industrial park, and I happened to get on the radio, and a gentleman heard me on the radio, and he came up, and we're hopefully hooking him up with a business, one of the empty buildings in the industrial park. So I've already been trying to do the mayor's job. I'm the guy that got the buses to take the kids down to Ocean Beach when our city council illustriously closed down and didn't fund the lifeguards for Spalding Pond. So I'm the one that thought that up with my camera woman over there.
All right, thank
So-
you. They're seeing the stop signs, that's why you see the abrupt stop. Very good. Mr. Wilson?
So for me, the mayor is not just a figurehead. I think the mayor is someone who needs to go out, not only just for this community, but has to promote this community in other areas. So that means going to other towns, that means going to businesses in order to attract them here. You have to have a plan, like I said, but that plan has to be promoted elsewhere. We can't expect businesses to come here and us not go to them. We've got to be willing as a mayor to go out and actually be the person who is bringing things here. So it's more than just a figurehead.
And Mr. Russell, Mr. Radecki? Mr. Russell, then we'll finish with you, Mr. Radecki.
Yes, actually, the mayor, as far as I'm concerned, is not just a figurehead. He is someone who should go out and get business and bring business into Norwich. But in order to do that, we have to get control of the government and make it smaller. It's the only way that we're going to be able to reduce the taxes to be able to attract business and, of course, more people into Norwich. And as we do that, then the tax base will grow and taxes will go even lower.
Mr. Radecki, you get
Well,
last word?
would you rather be called a weak mayor or a figurehead? If I'm mayor, I'd rather be called a figurehead instead of a weak mayor, because to me, a weak mayor means nothing. A figurehead means something. You're a figurehead to the people of the city of Norwich and to all the residents and the family of Norwich. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll go to our second question. We begin with Mr. Nystrom. We got a question about Chelsea Gardens and the lack of progress in seeing that move forward over the many years. You well know some of the neighbors up there were upset with the clearing that went on. So if you were elected mayor, and we'd like to hear from everyone, but beginning with Mr. Nystrom, if you were elected mayor, is there at some point where you pull the plug on that idea, or you know, what's your position going forward with that project?
2 years ago, when we ran in 2015, I was asked a similar question, and I'll stand by those words today and a year from now. I said I thought we ought to give them at least 3 years more. Well, 2 years are about up. They've got one more year on that calendar that I established, and I'll stand by that. If they have not produced significant funding that can be demonstrated, that can lead towards the completion of the project, at the end of that year, I will pull my support. I'll stand by what I said 2 years ago. Keep my word.
Okay, we're going to go right north, so, and then, at least for the initial question, Mr. Radecki?
The initial question, Chelsea Gardens, I don't know a lot about. I know they clear cut a lot of it. Originally, when Chelsea Gardens was there, we supported it a little bit in our business, and that was years and years ago, and it sat dormant. Now, they clear cut, it's been in a paper, again, the newspapers, is it what they say? I was never at the meetings. Mr. Nystrom was involved in that, and I appreciate that. I'm not saying pull the plug on it, but if we can't get funding, as Peter said, for it, or if they can't get funding, then pull the plug and either add it to Mohegan Park. The land's been clear cut.
All right, thank you. Mr. Oldfield?
Yeah, this whole thing about Chelsea Gardens is a mess. There was no planning when they did this. There was no cooperation between anybody. They took 9 acres of pristine park that was not supposed to be destroyed per the treaty when the people gave the land to the city of Norwich. They went in and strip cut all those beautiful old trees. Right here, we have I FOI everything. People in city clerk's office are sick of seeing me. $262,949 we have spent on a hole in a beautiful forest that was put there. There was a solution. They could have put it on Plain Hill like they did in Chicago by using a farm.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson?
So for me, I think, one, we look at Mohegan Park as an asset to this community, and there hasn't been any production. Funding is not there. So for me, let's look for another solution. I don't think we should continue to destroy a beautiful park. Let's move into a different area so that we can do things that are positive for the city and not let something continue to lay stagnant.
Mr. Russell, on the Chelsea Gardens.
Well, again, clear cutting to me was kind of ridiculous. Not only that, but from what I understand, we didn't even get to sell the wood. That was basically just giving it away. And so that would have been another type of funding for us should we have kept that. But unfortunately, we didn't. So basically, the city has been mismanaged for years, and it's time to put someone in there that will manage the city properly, including this.
Mr. Nystrom, you're currently the only one serving on the council. You previously mayor when this project was also on the drawing board. Has the city given too much leeway to this? Has it exercised proper control?
Well, if you go back fully, this project has been in existence over 2 decades. And at that time, I wasn't on the city council, but I did support the project. I remember Ed Reggett's former bank president, Chelsea Groton Savings, was chairing that effort. And it's a wonderful concept. The bottom line, though, is over 20 years has run its course. They did hire a new director. To say there was no planning is absolutely not true. There's a complete design of the facility, if it were to be funded, already in place. They are at that stage, and so if they don't come up with the funding, though, and if they don't have significant resources available within a year.
I have to cut you off there, just to be fair. 30 seconds on the rebuttals. Yeah. Mr. Oldfield, to give you a chance if you want it. You said that you didn't think there was planning.
I've been to the Botanical Gardens in Chicago twice. What they did was they bought some farms like on top of Plain Hill. I know a gentleman who wants to sell his farm for something like this. Instead of taking the trees down, they buy the farm, they have a blank slate, it's nice and open, the stone walls are there. You want to build a lake, you dig the lake out, the dirt becomes a mountain. They put a little Japanese village on top of the mountain, they pump water, it's got waterfalls and everything. You don't go into the only park you have in the middle of town and chop it up. We need some class. Norwich needs class, and people don't think about that.
Anyone else on this one before I move to another one? All right. Next question is going to be to Mr. Radecki. Should the City Council continue funding the Norwich Community Development Corporation to promote economic development, or is that a role better left to the mayor's administration?
Short and sweet, when I ran in 2001 against Mr. Abley, I won that election, lost the mayorship. The mayor's job was economic development. Now, I'm not sure the exact amount of funds that are being spent to economic development, but that is the mayor's job, and I think all 5 of us up here agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Oldfield.
I agree with Joe. The mayor's primary job is development. NCDC has been almost, all they've been is a cash cow to us, all the money we give them. I have it in here if you want to see it after the talk. I can show you how much we pay NCDC every year and what they do. The gentleman that I'm taking at the industrial park, they took him to a building in Greenville. There were bicycles, sets of works, booze bottles. They didn't even clean up the sidewalk by the front door. And when he said, I'm not going in there, they said, oh, wait till you see what's inside. He goes, if this is the way the outside looks, I'm not going in. You can't do that.
Mr. Wilson, the question is, should the city continue to fund NCDC, or should that role be more in the administration's office?
So I think first and foremost, whoever becomes mayor is coming in the middle of a fiscal year, so you don't just pull the plug. I think the other chance is they have never been given guidelines or goals to meet for their funding. So before you pull the plug on funding anyone, let's give them the chance of the city council and the mayor giving them goals to meet. If they don't meet those goals, then we have that conversation. But let's do our part in giving them a goal to meet for economic development. More hands than one is always better.
Thank you. Mr. Russell.
Well, I tend to agree with Mr. Radecki and Mr. Oldfield in that I think that the NCDC has been really very lax on their job and everything else, and I think it's time to look elsewhere. And basically, I think the mayor's job anyhow is for economic development. Let's let the mayor do his job and not depend upon a private agency like NCDC to do the job.
Mr. Nystrom.
NCDC is an interesting issue. It seems to be more prevalent during election time. The fact of the matter is, the Panema Mills project that is being developed right now, over $100 million have been invested, was secured through the large effort of NCDC. They wrote the grants. They set up all the meetings. To suggest that they're not getting anything done in this city is not correct. They manage the industrial park. They worked with all the businesses up there. They helped locate new businesses in the industrial park. When I was mayor, it's quick.
What, was that 1 minute?
I'm sorry, it was 30 seconds. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we were still at the initial question, so I'm sorry. So you have another 30 seconds, I'm
Well,
sorry.
Just briefly, the Dominion site that's in the industrial park was a package put together by Mr. Mills, who's in charge of NCDC. He went and talked to the other 3 landowners who weren't utilizing the land. Where the 2 or the 3 properties came together, we created a new properties. For Dominion, is there a new taxpayer? Alan Brown's property up in the industrial park, it's running a bottling plant. No, that was, again, marketed by NCDC. The bond programs downtown, they manage those. The new buildings that are downtown being occupied by new owners, that's, again, NCDC. There is a track record to be proud of.
Thank you. Any rebuttal from the other candidates on
Yeah, I'd
on
just
whether it's a
like-
good investment or not?
I'd just like
Mr.
to say that,
Oldfield, yeah, Mr. Oldfield.
I'd just like to say that I have the payments here for NCDC and what the city pays NCDC, all that money. And you mentioned Panema Mills. Panema Mills is not gonna pay taxes for 17 years. Neither is the hotel over by the cemetery, by the Norwich Walmart. 17 years. I'll be dead by then. You know, what good is taxes if you're not gonna get them for 17 years, or somebody setting up development like that? I could see 17 months, or maybe
Time's
4
up, I'm
years.
sorry. Thank you. You had your hand up, Mr. Nystrom, we'll get to
I
others.
have to correct him. I had to correct him last week. They are paying taxes. It's the incremental increase in the increased value of the property that is deferred and staggered over time. The initial tax levy that is on each of these properties at the time of the beginning of the project is being collected. Mr. Oldfield, you continue to make erroneous statements that are not based in fact.
I read it in the paper.
Mr. Wilson.
Like I said, we haven't given NCDC goals to meet, and we have to do our part as the mayor and the city council to actually give them a chance. When we give them goals and they don't meet them, then we have that discussion. But like he said, we have to give them the chance. They've brought some things here, and we have to look at those things and actually question them better. But as leaders, we have not done our part in actually giving them goals to meet year after year when we fund them.
Thank you. Anyone else that hasn't had a chance to rebut on that one? If not, we'll move on to the next question. I think you're getting some good questions from the audience, and I appreciate that. And this goes to Mr. Oldfield. Racial profiling of African Americans by police has been a hot button issue in many communities. Do you see it as an issue for Norwich? And what would you do as mayor to promote healthy racial and ethnic relations in the city? And we'll begin with Mr. Oldfield.
No, I don't think Norwich has a racial profiling policy with the police department. I know that the police department here, the men, the women, the white officers, the black officers, the Hispanic officers, and even the Asian officer does a great job doing their job. Racial tensions for me never had any really, because my friends in high school I hung out with a lot of the black kids, and I think sports is a good way to get people to work together. And when you get involved in sports and you get kids involved in Little League and everything, even if they live on the other side of town where there are no minorities, they tend to become friends, and these fraternal organizations, whether it's sports or Cub Scouts or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or the 4-H or the Y, they're all great things for people to come together. And I think that a lot of people draw a lot of things in, and all you got to do is look at the playground and look at the kids, and you can find out they get along just great. I think this racial tension comes along later on.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
So for me, for racial profiling and the issue in this community, part of the only way we continue to fix the problem and make sure that it isn't a problem in this community is having that conversation. So part of it is it's an uncomfortable conversation for some individuals. And it's constantly, like they said, monitoring individuals to do just that. The other part is that we have to do our part in making sure there's checks and balances in place. And continuing to have individuals in communities of color, communities of non-color. Oh, a minute.
That was,
30 seconds.
no, it's 1 minute. Yeah, it's 1 minute for everyone in the initial question, and then 30 seconds when they get the
I got
chance to
ripped off.
rebut.
It's okay, no.
So just to get that straightened out, yeah, 1 minute when everyone gets 1 minute on the question, and then rebuttal 30 seconds.
Debate's gonna go really fast.
So, like I was saying, in order to continue the conversation and making sure that we are addressing the issue is having that conversation, going into communities and bringing communities together. As mayor, as council members, we have to do that. That means meeting people outside of where we normally do. Meetings, boards, commissions, outside of just forums. We have to go outside of our comfort zone in order for that to happen. I think our men and women in uniform do a great job of that. Going in, playing in parks, playing basketball with some of our students, coming in our schools to mentor our young youth. I think we continue that dialogue at a young age and build it up to when we are adults. We continue to make this issue something that we can be positive on.
All right, Mr. Russell?
Well, I really don't think we have a problem with racial profiling in Norwich because I know a few of the patrolmen, and I don't see that as a problem. However, it's something that we might want to address with, again, sports and basically just getting people involved. Again, you see children out there playing. It really doesn't matter if the children are a different color or of different nationality. Children seem to play good together, and we adults could learn a lot from the children. And really, it's time to stop the finger pointing. And again, I don't think we have a problem with racial profiling. We have the patrolmen that we have here are very professional, and they don't seem to have a specific way of dealing with anybody of any race. They deal with the problem at hand.
Thank you. Mr. Nystrom?
Well, first of all, if someone thinks they're a victim of racial profiling, I hope that they report it, and it needs to be then addressed. I will say that our new police chief, when he became chief, instituted some sensitivity training and brought it here to our city, and I know he's trying to stay ahead of all issues that can surround how an officer treats someone when they encounter a traffic stop or something to that effect. So he's being prospective, trying to stay ahead of the curve. And I think that's a credit to him and a credit to the force.
All right, thank you. Mr. Radecki?
Well, racial profiling, like I said, again, being in this city, and I think maybe this question came out of certain areas in the city. We have problems in certain areas of the city. The police know it, the police do the best they can. And 90% of these people, whether they're black, white, Puerto Rican, whatever nationality they may be, it doesn't matter. But they're not from this area. And this is where the problems are in this city. People infiltrate this city for drugs, guns, or whatever it may be. But as far as racial profiling in the city, I do not see it, and I've never seen it, being in business. Utilities has different ethnic people, public works, the police department, the fire department, everybody. So I do not see that. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson again, so this is the rebuttal stage. You get 30 seconds, Mr. Wilson.
So I will say, to say we don't have a racial profiling problem would be premature. This topic wouldn't have came up if we didn't have the report that came out of the state of Connecticut when they did it with every single town. Norwich Police Department was on the higher end of the spectrum when it came to towns, when it came to racial profiling traffic stops. So I will say the chief here has done an excellent job with mediating the issue. But, I think the biggest part is to say that it doesn't exist is an understatement. We've done the part to draw a solution, and they've done an excellent job at it. But it was something that was brought to light about a year or so ago.
Thank you. Anyone else want to comment further? Mr. Oldfield?
Yeah, I just want to say that everyone, there's still a lot of people around who are still, I don't know if you want to call them racist or they're prejudiced against people. There's probably a cop out there who doesn't like short, fat guys with balding red hair or wear blue suits. There's people out there who are gonna question anybody, because prejudice does exist. But with a good administration, and like this gentleman said right here, the Derell said the chief is a great guy. I've seen more cops in my neighborhood since he's been the chief than ever. So they're out there, they're doing their job, and just work with them. And if you have a problem, like the other gentleman said, you gotta report it. And
Thank you. Anything further before we move on? No. Next question then goes to Mr. Wilson. From our audience, downtown Norwich represents a huge potential for economic development with a large amount of unused or underutilized space, much of it in historic buildings. As mayor, how would you act to revitalize its potential?
So part of the whole entire part of promoting a city is bringing a variety of businesses downtown. So when you look at other downtowns and you look at areas that are flourishing and they have individuals in and out, they have a variety of things. For me, one of the things that you should bring downtown is we need some type of educational training center downtown. You have to see that when you have colleges, when you have training institutes and areas that individuals can go and get that education or that training, they then visit the parts of shops downtown. They have places that they want to go and have coffee and study. They want to meet friends and have a good time after a Friday or a Thursday class. So it comes with bringing a variety of things downtown. So for me, it's going after not just one type of a business, but a variety of businesses that can also be beneficial to residents here in the city of Norwich.
Mr. Russell, downtown revitalization?
Well, basically, I think it's, again, the job of the mayor to attract business downtown. How we can do that is not by going after the people and saying, okay, yes, you can open a business, but you have to pay the back taxes. To me, if a building is bringing in zero taxes right now, we have to work with the business that wants to go in there to find out how they can get their business going without too much headache, shall we say. And we have to basically work through all of the red tape that has been put in place to get the business in place down there. And again, it's going to take someone willing to work with the business and willing to basically, let's get rid of the red tape and let's get the businesses back downtown and make it so that downtown is actually palatable again.
Mr. Nystrom?
I guess I'd pick up where I left off. When I was mayor, I promoted the passage of the downtown bond programs, and then I engaged the voters because that had to be adopted by you at a referendum. And you gave a blessing to that program. That's the reason that we are seeing investment in downtown right now, whether it's these guys or Epicure or the 3 buildings on Broadway and so forth. Those programs are making a difference financially. Sometimes it's a marginal difference like that that makes a decision for someone to invest, and that you're seeing that in downtown right now, and I think that's really important. Those bond programs, however, are in their 8th year, and it's going to take the citizens again to either reauthorize those or to say no to that. But at some point in time, the funding in that program, most of it's been utilized. And that demonstrates that there is activity downtown, and I hope everyone's encouraged by that. But you engage the people, engage the businesses, and you do have to look at NCDC. They are the ones who are managing that program. That's why there's success.
Thank you. Mr. Radecki, downtown revitalization is a topic.
Downtown. My opinion, downtown will never be what it was. It has grown a little bit with some development. They've had the bonds. The people use up their bond money, stay 3, 4, 5 years, the business closes. So yes, we've had a lot of business come into downtown, and the same businesses left. One of the things downtown, and I think is one of the worst things I've seen, is at the Regan Hotel, you have a laundromat on a beautiful street now that was redone on the first floor. I don't know who let that go through in the city council or NCDC, but I really think that's bad. But downtown is never going to be what it was in the 60s and 70s. We have movie theaters, we had everything. It's going to be, it's not, I'm not saying it isn't coming back, but it's going to take a lot more than the next 5 or 10 years to bring it back. And Peter wants to bond more money to do that. We're spending more money for a gray goose maybe, I don't know.
Thank you. Mr. Oldfield?
Norwich blew it when they moved Three Rivers Community College over to Norwich Tech. That should have went downtown, that would have stimulated the economy, that would have brought coffee shops in and everything else. Because if you move the college downtown, you'd have something there where people would go there. I agree with Mr. Russell about these back taxes. When people come in trying to buy a business and the person that they're buying it from owes back taxes. I don't see why the new guy should have to pay for them, give them a break. We give a lot of taxes abatements to a lot of people. But Norwich needs, I said it in the last debate, Norwich needs an attraction downtown, whether it's a college. I don't care if we bring a Liberty ship up there and make a Navy museum out of it. I was contacted the people with the Amistad, trying to get the Amistad to come up here as a permanent type of something downtown that would bring people into the city and down to Howard Brown Park. And these little bistros are popping up, and the little breweries, and it's coming back, but it would come back a lot faster if we got something down there that people wanted to see.
All right, everyone got a chance at the questions. This is the rebuttal part. I'd like to start, Mr. Russell, if you could address, as a libertarian, the idea of investing bonded money to assist businesses to get started. I'd like to, hear your take on that. So,
I have a problem with bonding, and
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I have a problem with bonding in that bonding is spending future money today. We need to start living within our means, and we need to stop spending money on things the city should not be spending money on. And basically, we attract business down there by lowering taxes, not by spending city money. We're spending your future money here, and it's time to stop spending money that we don't have.
Mr. Nystrom, you sound like you're supportive of the program. I'd like to get your response, and then we'll hear from others.
Well, the bottom line is the bond programs exist because the voters approved it. It wasn't done by 7 politicians sitting in City Hall. They put it out to referendum, and they supported it. They wanted to see some investment down there to stimulate public-private investment. The other thing you want to keep aware of downtown is stop tearing the buildings down. I fought very hard to reverse the position of this city council a year ago to tear the Reed and Hughes down. And that Reed and Hughes now will be added to our tax rolls when the Women's Institute completes its project.
Anyone else want to get in on this? Again, we're still in the 30-second rebuttal phase.
30-second rebuttal. As I said, I don't think downtown will ever be what it was. And we're talking about the Reed News. I think we got about $165,000 from 4 engineering firms that rip it to the ground. They put the bid, I don't know how much that cost. Weiss Construction was low bidder to tear it down. All of a sudden, the Women's Institute come in, and the city said, we're going to give you 90 days, another 90 days. I see it's boarded up a little bit more, but I have no clue how long it's going to be like that. It should have been torn down 15 years ago.
Mr. Oldfield, and then
I'm a
Mr.
history
Wilson.
major, that's what I did in college, and I love history, I love historic buildings, I love the Leffingwell Inn, I love colonial Norwich Town, but there comes a time when something like the Reed and Hughes business, it's got to come down. We have to enact laws and counsel, whatever you want to call them, where you get so much time to either save it or take it out. Because this is going to go on like the Warriga went on and on and on, and I agree with Joe. They put a laundromat on the first floor right on the main drag of this beautiful historic building. When they did it, they didn't even do it right. Reed and Hughes should come down.
Mr. Wilson?
So I think first, with Mr. Russell, in order to invest in your city, if you're not going to bond or we're not going to plan out future projects, then we're not investing in our city to bring things here. The second point I would say is with the downtown bond, we've had businesses come, but there's no true oversight of the program because we've had quite a few businesses that have gotten money from the program that don't any longer exist downtown. So we need to take a better look at actually having accountability for the programs that we have here in the city.
To be fair, I'm going to give you one more shot, Mr. Nystrom, because a couple of people really questioned your support for the Reed News and not raising it. Others felt strongly. So another 30 seconds just to end this part of the debate. Your defense of your position.
Bottom line is, I think that the Reed and Hughes is worth saving. The decision now rests, they got a variance just the other night. People want to know what the timetable is. That allows them to move forward with stabilization because they now know that they can occupy the building as the building is designed to be with residents. And if you think downtown is going to come back without a residential component, you'll be sorry and very much mistaken. There have to be people living downtown. That's the one, those are the people who are going to support the coffee shops that people talk about here and other small businesses. There have to be feet on the street. That's part of the equation.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to the next set of questions. So we're down to, we get back to a minute for the initial response. And we're back to Mr. Russell. And this is kind of a related question, the last one. Property owners in the downtown and surrounding neighborhoods, the so-called Central City District, pay an additional 8.2 mils in taxes on top of the 40.5 mils assessed to others in the city. Is that fair? What might be done about it? And do you think that additional tax is hurting economic development efforts? We'll start with Mr. Russell.
Well, taxes, period, hurt economic development, whether it's additional or not. And really, it's time to look at the city budget to see what we can do to reduce taxes dramatically. The fire district down there, everyone that lives in it complains because there's a lot of times, like for example, I live maybe a stone's throw from Laurel Hill, but yet I still pay the fire tax. So I think it's time to revisit that and see what we can do about reducing that, if not eliminating that particular tax.
Mr. Nystrom.
Fire tax has always been a controversial issue in the city of Norwich. You pay for a service that you receive. That's one view that people have. Clearly, an 8 mil difference in taxation certainly should be viewed as a detriment in downtown. It's a higher cost. How you overcome that, I think you have to work with the fire department downtown to curtail costs. I've probably been the largest voice on that issue in the last year and a half. To the credit of the fire department, they negotiated a new contract for 3 years. That contract costs less in the third year than it does in the first year. The firemen gave back substantial contributions back literally to the taxpayers by giving things up, by having more contributions on deductibles and so forth. That should be acknowledged. I still think we can find more savings, but I think we ought to also recognize the value of the departments outside the city because they've saved us a bundle of money.
Maybe we get that more on rebuttal. Mr. Radecki, the topic is the extra tax, 8.2 mil tax paid in the city central district.
Well, as everybody said, we know that has been money for 40-some years. I believe since I've been here, that it's always been an extra tax. The problem is we have a paid fire department that do a great job, and we have volunteers that do a great job. You're never going to get rid of the paid fire department, and you're never going to get rid of volunteers. They all belong here. If they could all get together, I believe, and it doesn't matter where they fight a fire. If there's a fire, every town's at the fire. When the corner store or the Panema house burned down right next to my shop, every fire department in Norwich there. So the paid fire department, the volunteers, if anything, we got to lower taxes, I said, but if we have to do something downtown to lower them to 4% and give each one of us, and I don't want to see no higher taxes, another $0.25 mil and make us equal, I think that could be a good reason or a good plan to do.
Thank you, Mr. Oldfield.
As I've been campaigning, I've been talking to the paid firefighters. I've talked to Chief Scalaro. I've talked to the volunteer firemen. I've talked to the chief of East Great Plains, for example. If you guys don't read the paper, we have a problem right now between our paid firemen. There's a rift between the paid firemen and the volunteers about turf and about who goes where, when, and everything. And if I'm elected, I want to sit down with all of them. They used to have bi-monthly chiefs meeting, and John Bilda, of all people, is the guy that put it together. And every 2 months, all the chiefs and the paid chief, the volunteer chiefs, and Chief Scalaro would sit down with the city manager and the mayor, and they'd work these things out. There's a lot of stuff that's been in the press for the last year or two. Just go back to the articles on the computer and read them. It's not good. So a strong, powerful mayor is going to sit down and straighten this out. And I've already started doing that already, and I haven't been elected yet.
Mr. Wilson.
So I think it definitely is a huge issue, the difference in taxes in the CCD versus the TCD. I live in the CCD, so I understand the exact pain that both businesses as well as residents have. Part of the issue is like they said, we'll have that communication to better have better relationships between all the fire departments. But I think outside of that, it's being creative in bringing business here and being creative in how we can save our residents through the budget and through other things that we do. Part of it is also we have to engage the voters. We have to engage to see what you want, what you don't want. And that's not just during election time, you tell us what your priorities are. That's through the budget process also engaging you. So that means coming to your communities and saying, these are the things on the table, how can we best serve you, and what are your priorities?
Thank you. Rebuttal, 30 seconds as we go to this phase. Mr. Russell, you said perhaps even eliminate the tax. How might you get to that? Would you not have a paid department? Would you spread the tax out equally among all residents? If you could elaborate.
Well, we could look at how to reduce the cost of the paid fire department and just see what it would take to get the taxes back down again. Norwich is taxed way too much, whether you're in the CCD or not. So we have to look at ways to reduce taxes, and that includes the CCD. So, it's time for the politicians to stop their spending and to start saving.
Thank you. Mr. Nystrom, you started talking about the volunteer service, and I think you've been a strong proponent in opposition to this idea of spreading the tax out citywide. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're correct.
Could you elaborate on your thought about you were bringing up the volunteer departments and their kind of role in this? I want to give you a chance to finish.
Well, if you spread the fire tax citywide, those who pay the fire tax will see a savings for 1 or 2 years, but as costs go up, and they do each year, that savings will disappear rather quickly. But you also have to worry about the businesses in the town who have not paid that fire tax in the past. And our largest employers, largest taxpayers are in the town. And I happen to know through discussions with them and some of their employees, if they're hit with that fire tax, they could leave. What happens to our tax base then? There are repercussions to these kinds of decisions. You've got to be very careful.
Mr. Wilson.
So I would say not one Democrat, myself, any of the city council, has even thought of spreading the tax across the board. It's not a thought that we've even brought up for discussion. That's not the way to go. So I just want to put that out there. That's not a discussion that we're having.
Thank you. Mr. Radecki or Mr. Oldfield?
Well, and as I just said, you have volunteers, you have paid. I mean, nobody wants their taxes to go up. But we're all equal people. We're all one family in this city. So we got to share these taxes downtown. And I think this is one reason that these small businesses are leaving downtown. They're money short, and these tax bills come in at 6 mils extra, 7 mils extra, or even to rent an apartment downtown or own a house downtown. You can't afford it anymore. So it's going to raise everybody's taxes maybe a few cents, but it's a discussion.
Thank you. Anything else?
Well, just like I said earlier, I'd have to sit down with the volunteer chiefs and the full-time chief and talk about the responsibility and sharing the wealth as far as what these departments need, these volunteers need. Because I'll tell you what, I have a lot of respect for volunteer firemen when I hear that alarm going off at night in a snowstorm or in the cold or whatever. Because we get served by a volunteer fire department, these guys are the best. But that to have one part of the town pay more in taxes than another one because of a full-time fire department, once we sit down with the chiefs, hopefully we can work something out to relieve a little bit of the pressure, but not all of it.
Thank you. Now we're to the next question. It's to Mr. Nystrom. What should be the higher priority, holding the line on taxes or maintaining a quality public school system? And it appears the council could face that difficult choice given the state budget cuts.
Well, I really don't want to separate the issues. They're important. With dollars and cents, though, you have to balance your budget. You can't spend money if it's not there. You point to the fact that we don't have a state budget and that we are I'll say over-reliant on state revenue, 4 out of $10, basically right now. It's kind of a roll of the dice. It's going to be there or it's not going to be there. The education system needs to be rebuilt. We have a lot more schools than we can afford to carry. That's why the school board put together a plan. Unfortunately, the plan, in my opinion, wasn't a good plan. And so I'll tell you, I voted against it at this time. I also knew that if I sent a $57 million bond to the voters to vote on it this fall, it would go down in flames because they weren't going to accept that additional cost. So I'd like to see that plan reconstituted, and I want the teachers from every school, part of this new group, to look at the data we've already paid for, and let's bring it back and get it done correctly.
Thank you. Mr. Radecki, it's a difficult decision the next council makes. He's trying to support education, but trying to control taxes too.
Well, the school systems, they tore Buckingham School down and school in Washington Street. I'm bad with names tonight. But anyway, we tore them down. They were older schools, big schools. Greenville has a lot of children. Down in the city, there's a lot of children. We have an influx of children coming in. Why did we tear down 2 schools that were still viable for maybe the next 5 or 10 years? And the lots are sitting vacant. Greenville School can be used for nothing now except for a park the way it was left by the families, I understand. We tore down 2 buildings that were still viable and usable. And now they want $57 million or what it is to build another brand new school. It's a waste of money. I just don't know how to say any more about that. And our taxes, if we bond $57 million, we might as well move out of Norwich because we won't afford the taxes. Thank you.
Mr. Oldfield?
Yeah, I got a list of the top 50 educators in Norwich and what they make. This is before the last raises. All of these 50 people make over $84,000 a year. Well, that's just salaries. And we talk about schools, and our superintendent of schools said we're going to lay teachers off unless we get this what we want in the budget. They got it, and they got more. And so they hired a dozen more teachers, which is great. And now, all of a sudden, 2 months after they hire them, now the phone system for all the schools is going awry. Not just one school, like, hey, okay, Samuel Huntington was built in like 1930. Maybe the phones are from the 60s. Maybe that one school needs phones, not the entire system. You know, they don't call them educrats for nothing because they just want more money, more money, more money. And people have to say, I can live on this, but you can't keep going for raises. You can't keep going for this and going for that when the budget from the state hasn't even gone through, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you. And we're trying to figure out what the ghosts are on the machine here with the little...
I think we got a grill up there on the roof.
Mr. Wilson.
So I think when it comes to cutting taxes and education, the way you actually move a city in a positive direction is investing in education. That's where we're going to get the next wave of jobs, individuals that are going to invest in this community and that are going to carry on the jobs that we aren't going to be able to do 20 years from now. But on the other side of that is we have contract obligations. We have a process for paying teachers, administrators, et cetera, et cetera. But I think the other part of the issue is we have the opportunity to be creative. You know, we put our school system in limbo. You go on their website, they've got a lot of jobs that aren't filled. So part of us honestly bringing that conversation forward is bringing individuals to the table that are creative. And it's bringing parents, teachers, as well as elected officials to come up with a solution.
I know Tom Gerard just went to see if he could straighten out any idea what we're dealing with here? No. Okay. I think we started, sorry, Mr. Nystrom, right? So Mr. Russell, get a chance to comment on this, the challenge the next council will face between trying to hold the line on taxes yet supporting the city's education system.
Well, again, the education costs are way too much in this city. It's time to look at making education a lot more efficient It's time to look at salaries. It's time to look at a lot of things. It's time to look at the spending on education. And it's time to stop the addiction that the politicians currently have to spending your money, because after all, it is your money. But because it costs right now $15,500 per student to educate a child here in Norwich. If you go to a private or parochial school, it's probably somewhere around $6,000 or $5,000. The national average is only $8,000. So why are we almost twice as much as the national average? It's time to look at what it costs to educate a student in Norwich, and it's time to start doing something to make it a lot less expensive so that the citizens of Norwich won't be overtaxed.
Any follow-ups on the question? Mr. Nystrom, 30 seconds on the rebuttals.
Just quickly, I think we need a fact checker here. I'm seeing and hearing numbers thrown all out that I've never read. The one he just said, and so forth, 15,000 people. I don't believe that's accurate as far as the
It's on the Norwich website, sir.
Sorry about that.
Turn it off.
Just turn it off and talk about
Just turn it off and then stand up when they talk.
Stand up and talk.
Yeah.
Turn it off.
I didn't realize that was off.
Hold on just a second.
it. Stand up for these things, they yell stand up as a gag, but for sure, my Marines used to do that, stand up. I thought it was a gorilla in the ceiling. Or was something broken and falls through the,
Because if we can record it, we hope to use the mics, because then we can also get it on the video feed, so we can find where the short is. Go ahead. Okay. Mr. Nystrom, how much time we have left?
I think we need to start over because we didn't turn them off fast enough.
Okay.
Can you just rewind your first comment?
Mr.
They didn't hear it
Nystrom,
anyway.
you were talking about the cost of education in Norwich, and you were having some different opinion, Mr. Russell.
Yeah, I've not seen numbers that high per pupil. Look, this was a difficult budget year. The education department got a 1% increase. They wanted more than that. They got 1%. Just like other departments all received less than they wanted as well. That's what happens sometimes when you're in hard, difficult times. When you know there's not enough money to pay for what everybody wants, you have to make hard choices. Doesn't mean you like doing it, but you still have to do it because you have to balance your budget across the board.
Thank you. Mr. Oldfield, on the salaries, you see Norwich as an outlier, or are they paying salaries and sort of the market demands for?
they're probably paying salaries inside the market demands, but it doesn't mean the market's correct. I mean, you know, when I was in school, we had 5 schools and 5 telephones in the entire school. You wanted to tell the principal something, you gave the good kid a note and he went down to the principal's office. You know, I know that technology wants to catch up and everything, but there has to come a time when we say, hey, look, we can only have so many cops, we can only have so many firemen, we can always have so many stuff, but all of a sudden, it's just when it comes to education, it's like automatic, 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 and it's killing the taxpayers.
Mr. Wilson, you seem like you give a real high priority education. Would that even mean you might need a tax increase if necessary, because it's such a priority?
You don't need a tax increase. So we had money that was put into the rainy day fund that could have went on some of the areas where we cut. But also the other part is are we bringing people to the table to have an honest dialogue about the budget they submit? Just coming for a budget forum does not cut that. We need to start the process now, not come March. And that's what has to happen. There has to be a successive process. We've got 9 months to do this. And why are we waiting? We're waiting too long to make a decision.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, Mr. Radecki, do you want to add anything? I don't think you had a chance to rebuttal. No?
Well, basically all I would say is the numbers that I get from the Norwich website. So, you know, if Pete hasn't heard them, I don't know. It does cost, according to the Norwich website, $15,500 per student. and that is over double what some of the schools are nationwide. It's time to stop the spending.
All right, we'll ask you to let our,
One more thing?
briefly.
Yeah, we're like 46th out of 53 schools our size. So instead of spending money on all this other stuff, why don't we get back to spending money on teaching? Because the Norwich School Board, and I was told this by a school teacher who wants to remain anonymous, we're either 43rd or 46th, and that's being liberal, out of 53 school districts in the state our size. So no matter how much more money you want, let's get back to teaching the kids and becoming the top 10, and then we'll talk about doing all kinds of new wonderful stuff with money.
All right, thank you. Anything else? Okay, try to speak up. The next question goes to Mr. Radecki. It's pretty straightforward. Are there any specific spending reductions you would propose to the council to lower taxes?
Spending reductions, I had a little conversation today and I said it, I am not against bonding money in the city of Norwich, but all we talk about is bonding, bonding, and bonding, and believe me, I'm not against it. It's the wasteful spending of the bonding that this city has done for years. There's so many projects that we bonded that have fell through. Norwich is looking at a bond or whatever, they want to do a study downtown Norwich. Two-way traffic again, $500,000. In 2001, the city council done the same study. I was told by some people in the city, well, gee, the cars are getting smaller, that's why we want to do this study. I don't believe that. If we stop wasting money in this city, our taxes could go down very fast, I believe, and I think they could stay down. Thank you.
Mr. Oldfield, any ideas for reducing spending?
Well, I agree with Mr. Radecki on most of that. I just don't like tax abatements, and I've gone through this before. We give tax abatements to every Tom, Dick, and Harry that wants to open something in Norwich. And we're giving tax abatements to, and these people aren't paying taxes. So the people who do pay taxes have to make it up when we go to do all this other great stuff we're doing. So what I'm saying is, let's give them a utility tax. The percentage of people who pay taxes in Norwich is only like 60%. The other 40% live in apartments, they live with relatives, they live in city housing, subsidized housing, etc. So what we do to a new company coming in, like my buddy Mike Gleason coming in from a Whiskey reservation up in New York, if he comes to Norwich to sell some of his casino stuff, is we say, listen, seeing that the Norwich Public Works can go to the Derby Gate, they can bring Dick the Roach down for $45,000 a day, once a month, to do what John Bill isn't been trained to do, and spend this other money that he gets $93,000 a year retirement. We have the utilities hook up those new buildings for nothing. We give them 50% off their utilities for 5 years, and that's how they get, we're not going to give them a tax abatement. Now, 90% are paying a very little amount to help that guy out to come to Norwich.
Thank you. Mr. Wilson.
So I think getting back to the actual question, when it comes to cutting taxes, there is no specific thing that I would cut. I think the discussion needs to be that everybody sits around a table after budgets are submitted and we work together. How can departments work together? How can individuals work together to make the city the best that it possibly can and give its best product? So there's no specific cut that you prioritize. What it is you look at the whole picture. How can we all work together, one, but also what are the needs of the city at the time? From year to year they change, and we need to have everybody sitting around the table. We as mayor and city council, it's our job to approve a budget, but it's also our job to hear out what those demands are and what those budgets look like. And if we incorporate people in a bigger conversation, we'll have a better product.
Thank you. Mr. Russell, any ideas for reducing taxes?
Yeah, that's where the Libertarians would really come ahead, because Libertarians firmly believe that government should only be doing certain things, and there's a lot of things government is doing right now that they should not be doing. And there's a lot of areas in the city budget that should be eliminated. One specifically that I will just mention is the Traffic Commission. I think it's time to get rid of that, because if you look at all of the shopping malls and what have you, they do not have one, so we don't need one downtown. All that does is chase people out of downtown. That's just one idea. These are things that we have bantered about. It's time to stop the addiction of politicians spending your money. We have to live on a budget, and we have to make sure that the budget balances, and it's time for the politicians to do the same thing.
Mr. Nystrom.
I would refer back to the budget that was just completed. We gave a resolution support looking for 5% reductions in spending from the budget adopted the year before. We then tasked our new city manager, who's the quote paid professional, to tell us what are the priorities within every agency. So we had every agency, we looked at everything they spent the year before. They had to justify it through this budget process with the council now, not just the city manager, because it's really a two-step process. It's the city manager through April, then it becomes the council's budget. He determined the numbers and the cuts that were recommended. We supported most of them. There was give and take back and forth on some of them, like the van driver at the senior center and so forth like that. But we relied on his expertise. We also had the courage to take the hits for making those cuts, because the taxpayers said it very loud and clear in 2015. They want a lower mill rate, they want less spending. And that's what we did then, and I think that's a process we should do again.
I'll give you the first rebuttal just to elaborate. So do you feel you've squeezed out as many savings as can be squeezed out? Sounds like you went through a pretty torturous process, you're saying.
It was a difficult process, because it involves people. That's never fun. Some people lost their jobs. People don't run for office so they can take someone's job away. But when you hear the outcry from the people who elect you, and you see the repercussions of overspending and overtaxing that's going on for years in this city, you have to change the direction of the city when it comes to spending. That decision is not complete. There will be further review. It must happen every single year. That's what a real business does. They don't accept that there's going to be an increase each year. Neither should we.
Thank you. Any more comments on that?
So I think the other part is we've had, he says we have $5.1 million in savings, yet the budget is higher by $1.4 million or more. So where's the true savings? The savings that honestly come off of what departments have submitted as their budget? That's the first part. But then the second part is this process starts again next year. Budgets are redone again, and are we going to cut? Or are we going to work to be creative, to bring things here and work with one another to work within our means?
Mr. Oldfield.
Yeah, I hate to say this, but I agree with Pete Nystrom, because I think every year we need to go out there and take that 5% and try to whittle the budget down so we don't lose people and we can keep people in Norwich. Nobody likes going by and seeing 6 or 7 guys standing around a truck doing nothing. You got to make the supervisors get these people doing their jobs, get things accomplished, and make sure we ride on these problems. But
Thank you. Mr. Russell, Mr. Radecki, I haven't heard a rebuttal from you if you want to comment further on this issue. Mr. Radecki first.
I disagree with some of the things. They're sitting here saying that they cut our budget by $5 million. I agree with Derell, that it was maybe not even that much money. I do know for a fact of life that they did cut the budget. But on some of the assessments that have come in to the residents of the city of Norwich, instead of assessments going down, the assessments have went up. And that is a proven fact. So next year, you're going to feel it.
And last word, Mr. Russell.
Again, libertarians believe in a budget that is as small and as efficient as possible. It's time to look at the budget and to look at what we are spending money on. And it's time to stop the addiction that the politicians have on spending your money. It's ridiculous. And we're losing a lot of people every year because of the fact that taxes in this town are too high. It's time to bring them down.
All right, we have time for one more question before we go to final statements. It's Mr. Oldfield's turn, and I got this question, a couple emails someone submitted today, and it's whether our candidates, if they were elected mayor, would they look at pushing potentially a charter change to make it a strong mayor, or are they satisfied with the current configuration of the office? And we'll start with Mr. Oldfield.
Yeah, I think that everyone is pretty much satisfied with the way it is, with a weak mayor, and we have a strong city manager who runs it. My thing is, and I campaigned for this 12 years ago, and I'm going to give Norwich a full-time mayor. This doesn't mean that I'm going to go out and say, well, gee, now it's a full-time job, and now everybody has to do 40 hours, and we're going to make it a mandatory 40-hour job for the mayor. Me personally, I'm retired. I got plenty of time. I believe you should have a mayor who's there during the day, and he gives for $45,000 a year, which to some people here it may not be a lot of money. To me, it's a lot of money. So I'm going to give the city 40 hours a week as the mayor. And, you know, you've already got your 3 hours for the 2 city council meetings and all this other stuff. And, you know, I want to be there when developers come and say, hey, I want to go up to the industrial park. You can't say, well, wait until 7 o'clock tonight and then meet me at City Hall in the dark. We'll go up at that place in the industrial park and in the snowstorm. These guys want to be there. They want to meet you during the day, have a cup of coffee, and then go do what you got to do in the daylight and bring these guys in.
All right, time. Mr. Wilson.
So for me, like anything, we go to the voters. If it's something that the voters would support a strong mayor, then I would support going to it. But I think when it comes to having a strong mayor, regardless, we have a weak mayor right now system, is sacrifice. That's being available beyond just the 24/7. Being able to do things that make a buyer, developer that comes here feel that you're invested in them. For me, that's something that I'm willing to do. It has nothing to do with being retired or age. It has something to do with how much you're willing to sacrifice for your community, how much you want to invest in your community. So when it comes to this, it's about the investment as a mayor. That's what elected officials are elected for, to invest and sacrifice for their community, and that's what I'm willing to do.
Mr. Russell?
Well, I think we need to look at a strong mayor. I think that the taking it to the voters would be a great idea, but I think in the end, a mayor actually is responsible to the people, and the people actually are the ones who should have the final say in what is done. So to me, the city manager, I really would prefer to see a strong mayor, but again, I think we should put it forth to a referendum vote type of thing and let the people decide if they want a strong mayor. If they do, that's fine. I myself will put in 50+ hours per week because I can, and I will make sure that Norwich becomes the city that it can become rather than the city that it is right now.
Mr. Nystrom?
I have no problem supporting a charter revision commission, which is what you originally talked about. If one of the issues to be presented to the voters is going to a strong mayor form of government, I would not vote against that. I'd let the people decide, because I think that's your job when you sit up there. Engage the voters, and you have to listen to the majority. That's how this system works. That's what it's all about. I, however, personally believe in the city manager form of government. It's a paid professional, someone who is trained, educated to handle the kinds of day-to-day rigors that a city has. Politicians can often get in the way of the operations of a city. And when that happens, you can end up in lots of problems, or spend too much money, or raise too many taxes. So I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Radecki?
Well, the way it is now, I'm happy with a weak mayor, and I think it's the right way to go. And I agree 100% with Peter that that's why we have a city manager. If you want a strong mayor, I don't believe any one of us up here are qualified at all to be a strong mayor. A strong mayor is going to make a couple $100,000 a year, 150, 200. You get rid of the city manager. So who up here is qualified to be a strong mayor? And if they do a referendum or a charter change, you're going to have to put this out to bid to find a mayor that's willing to come to Norwich, Connecticut to be a strong mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, and then Mr.
So I think the thing that we have to realize is if we go to a strong mayor system, just like with a weak mayor, there's going to be personnel changes. So you're not, as a strong mayor, the only one making the decisions in City Hall. You have a staff behind you that helps you make quality decisions that impact people. So as a strong mayor, you're not the only one making a budget. They've got staff that are helping them make the right decisions in the city. So I think that's the inaccurate piece.
Mr. Oldfield.
As a strong mayor, to get someone to be a strong mayor, you're taking two people and turning them into one person. You're going to have to pay that person about $200,000 a year, and you're also losing that other person. So right now, with the mayor, and then you've got the city manager, who's already making $150,000 now, and the mayor makes $47,000, this strong mayor is going to ask for $200,000 to do everything that two guys are currently doing. I like the odds of having two guys working for less money than one guy who's doing all of it. We're making out financially.
Thank you. Anyone else on the issue of the mayor?
Well, again, we would, in my mind, I don't think we would need to pay the mayor $200,000 if he were a strong mayor. I think, maybe another 10, 20, 30,000 at most to do the proper job, because if you're paying any more than that, to me it's exorbitant, just like a lot of the salaries are in this city. We need to start looking at salaries in this city, and that's one way we can save money.
Just briefly.
So if you're paying somebody $200,000 to do the job as mayor, he's not sacrificing, or he or she is not sacrificing for the community. So there has to be something that is reasonable, and $200,000 wouldn't be reasonable. I don't think so.
30 seconds on this, just briefly before we go to the closing statements, because it's related. The charter actually calls for the mayor hiring an economic development specialist to assist him, and since that charter was adopted, that particular language, it's seldom, if ever, been used. So if I could just go down the line saying, Mr. Wilson, would you consider filling that position of an economic development specialist that's called for in the charter?
So I think for me, it's right now we have NCDC that is helping with economics in the city. So part of it is over the next year, because I'm coming in halfway through a fiscal year, looking at whether or not that model works. Then also talking to individuals to see if it's the right decision to make. If it is the right decision, I would support an economic specialist, helping with the day-to-day operations of the mayor, because like a lot of them have said, two heads are better than one.
All right, Mr. Oldfield?
Yeah, if you're paying the NCDC the hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to run that enterprise, why would you get somebody to do basically the same job? If NCDC goes, then you could get it's basically just a different title for the same job. So, I mean.
All right, Mr. Radecki?
Well, the mayor, economic development, and I agree with John and Derell that the mayor, Bob Mills is community development, economic development. So whatever they make, they make. I don't know what the figures are. Mr. Oldfield knows. But it's a job that's already there. So why does the mayor need to hire somebody, maybe even part-time, to do that when you have NCDC already in place, even though I'm not happy with them?
Mr. Nystrom, would you consider filling this position, economic development specialist?
It's one or the other. You're not going to do both.
One of the other.
If you have an economic development specialist, if my memory serves me, the last person that was in a position like that, probably shouldn't say her name, but I think there was someone working in that area. This was before the relationship with NCDC started. And I suppose you could go back and look to see what the results were of that person's effort in that position. But you have to have people engaged. It's not just...
Yeah, I just gave 30 seconds because it was kind of added on to the other question, and we have to get to closing. Thank you. Mr. Russell.
Well, I myself, I'm not looking to spend any more money, so I would say that probably right now not, depending, of course, upon what we do with NCDC and that. But right now, I would say no.
All right. Okay, at this point, we're going to go to closing statements, and we're going to start with Mr. Wilson and go right down the line. Timekeep is 90 seconds, up to 90 seconds. They have to make their closing arguments. And Mr. Wilson, you get to start.
So first, before I start my time, I want to thank you guys from the day for allowing us the opportunity to expound upon our plans for the city of Norwich here. Thank everyone that came out to hear us out. Like they said, my name's Derell Wilson. I'm running because I want individuals to be the say-so of this city. We need a new generation of leaders to come in. We need a new slate. We need new individuals that are going to be creative, find savings, and not just cut in order to satisfy our residents. The other part is I'm coming in as an individual that is going to engage you. That's on a day-to-day basis to know what you want to see in this city. We need individuals to be a part of the solution and not expect you to be reactive to what we make as a decision. As an elected official, I plan to do more to make you guys feel as though you are the customer. We're going to work to promote the city, bring business here, and invest in our children, invest in our families, and invest in our seniors. So I thank you guys again, and I hope I have your support on November 7th.
Thank you. And Mr. Oldfield.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you all for coming down. I appreciate it, and sometimes I don't take things as serious as I should, but I see some of my smiling friends back there. But I just want to say that I'm going to give you a 40-hour mayor. I want to be a full-time mayor. I'm going to be in that office. My secretary is going to be hopefully getting a little more time than she gets now. And I'm going to be there for you when you call. I'm going to be there for you when you come down. And most importantly, I'm going to be there when these developers come down and these people want a tour. Like I took the gentleman from this other town around here over to the industrial park, and we found him a nice little factory up there that hopefully he'll be moving into in a couple of weeks. But, you know, it's a daunting task. I'm retired. I believe in being down at City Hall for 40 hours a week. Sometimes I don't appear to be the sharpest tool in the shed, but there's times I can just amaze people with some of the stuff that pops into my skull. So I hate corruption. I hate greed. I'm the guy that put the charges on some of these Derbygate people who got so far got what they deserved, if not a little less of that. I don't like corruption. As the mayor, there will be no corruption on my watch, hopefully. But I don't like people stealing your tax money or anybody else's money and doing inappropriate, unethical things. So thank you for your time. Thank you, sir, on the New London Day, and Claire Bissett and the gang here. But if you have any questions, I got some cards here, or they'll be out of the table after this, and my phone number's on it. You can give me a call.
All right, thank you. Mr. Radecki.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody for being here tonight, and the New London Day for having us. As most people in the city know, I do own a contracting company. Been here for 43 years, at least 43 years, I believe. And I know a lot about the city. I might not be the brightest person in the world, but I've been here and I've stuck out. I've stuck out in this city through thick and thin. And I'm getting pretty depressed, the way the city has been run, the way it's being run. And that's one of the reasons that I am running for mayor. I'm in a point right now, if I become your mayor, I'm giving up a lot. And it's a lot I'm giving up, okay? And I mean personal. And I just hope that the people of Norwich vote for me and respect my wishes and the wishes of the city council and the wishes of the people of Norwich. As I said to the students at NFA this morning, I don't care what section of the city you live, I don't care what nationality or race you are, we are one family and one family only in this city. And as one family, we can make this city great again. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Nystrom.
Thank you. Paul, thank you for being here, moderating, members of your staff as well. And I want to thank all of you for being here. Look, the last 2 years have not been easy for any of us. We've had to make hard choices, this new council. But this new council was put there by the voters because they had had enough. They didn't want every year the taxes going up and spending increasing. They wanted to see a change. Well, we brought that change, and when that happens, people often complain, and you have the right to do that, and we'll always listen. But our grand list needs time to grow. Some say it needs time to heal. It heals by us controlling the growth in spending. The city will always have fixed costs. It will always have costs like pension and health care costs. Those are fixed. But that doesn't mean you can't find savings. And our job is to find those savings. We went through a difficult process these last 2 years. Next year's not going to be any easier. It may be even more difficult, particularly if the state doesn't get a budget, because then we're still left holding the bag. You don't want a state run by executive order. That's what we're left with right now. If you give me your support and you support the Republican team, we're going to work very hard to reduce the cost of living in this city. That's what people are telling us they want. They don't want frivolous spending. They don't want to have to accept increases in spending every year. They want to see people and elected officials listen to what their needs are, because their families are important too. Government does not automatically grow.
Thank you. And Mr. Russell?
I would also like to thank everyone here, including the moderator. You guys have taken time out of your day to find out what we all have to say here. And basically, everyone here is telling you their version. The Libertarian version, of course, is totally different from what the Democrats and Republicans have to offer. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about reducing taxes, cutting waste. I often get asked how I'm going to achieve that, what I'm going to get rid of to lower taxes. Here's the difference between myself and everyone else on this stage here. I'm here today standing up for the residents of Norwich on principles, not on politics. The two principles that will guide me as your mayor is the right to self-ownership and the right to personal property. So when we talk about taxes, I'm not just saying I want to reduce your taxes because it's a popular political slogan. I want to reduce your taxes because I don't think anyone has the right to forcibly take your money. Your money is your money, and it's private money that you earn. What gives any one of us the right up on this stage, more expertise or authority to decide how best to spend your money? Isn't the best person to decide what to do with your money you? If you are ready for real change in Norwich, a change that is not backed by politics but is rooted in principle, then I ask for your vote on Election Day. I thank you very much for listening.
I thank you. I thank all the candidates. I thank the audience. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Thanks for sticking with it. That concludes our debate.